Border protection at a breaking point. A look at the rise of migration at the southern border. The push to impeach the president. A House lawmaker takes steps to move against President Trump. That impeachment measure comes as the president takes a victory lap in the wake of the Mueller Report. The latest from the White House and more tonight on Faith Nation. As some Democrats dig deeper with their call for impeachment, Republicans have a new target on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Well, less than a week since the Mueller report was released, and Congress is more divided than ever. On one side, Democrats giving new life to impeaching the president.
And on the other side, Republicans want House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff to step down after continued claims of collusion. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us to explain all the congressional frenzy. Abigail?
Thanks, John and Jenna. It looks like the end of the Russia investigation is just the beginning. Here on Capitol Hill, the Attorney General's 4-page summary of a reportedly 300-page report is like putting gas on a spreading wildfire.
Impeachment is a very divisive issue.
The top Democrat in Congress hasn't changed her tune.
No one, Madam Speaker, including the President of the United States, is above the law.
And neither has a freshman Democrat known for sparking headlines.
We're gonna impeach the motherfucker.
Her latest firework exploded Wednesday, with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib calling for a probe to impeach the president.
Some people have been asking for impeachment for a while.
Dismissing that resolution, the Speaker of the House remained on message.
Show us the report.
But as some Democrats mull impeachment, Mueller's report has Republicans smelling blood.
You've been at the center of a well-orchestrated media campaign,
calling for Adam Schiff, head of the House Intelligence Committee, to step down for repeated calls of collusion between Russia and the president.
We have no faith in your ability to discharge your duties in a manner consistent with your constitutional responsibility and urge your immediate resignation as chairman of the committee.
Congressman Schiff fired back, holding firm to his claims.
My colleagues may think it's okay that the Russians offered dirt on a Democratic candidate for president as part of what was described as the Russian government's effort to help the Trump campaign. You might think that's okay. I think it's immoral. I think it's unethical. I think it's unpatriotic. And yes, I think it's corrupt and evidence of collusion.
And Speaker Pelosi is standing by her man.
I'm so proud of the work of Chairman Adam Schiff.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy joined the calls for Schiff to step down.
There's nothing that could come from this committee that can be trusted.
Adding that the special counsel's findings clear former Republican Chairman Devin Nunes from any wrongdoing.
And didn't the Mueller report justify exactly what Chairman Nunes has said? There is a difference here drastically. One member lied to the American public, one member told the truth and was attacked for it.
Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, Abigail Robertson for us on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Abigail. Well, the battle over the border, again, the center of the president's Twitter feed today.
President Trump calling out Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, saying they're doing nothing to stop the flow of migrants coming to the United States and adding that he, quote, may close the southern border.
The president's tweet, in response to new warnings, the Mexican border crisis is pushing authorities and national security to the brink. They say there is simply no place left to put the illegal immigrants captured by Border Patrol. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with why some are calling the situation at the border broken. Eric?
Well, Jenna, that's right. The head of the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol did not mince words, saying the government must take action now, because the country's safety and security is at risk. Authorities say crisis and emergency do not overstate problems at the border between El Paso, Texas, and Mexico.
A high number for us is 4,000. A crisis level is 6,000.
But as of Wednesday, authorities had more than double that number in custody. Mekalinen calls 13,000 unprecedented and says it undermines the patrol's security efforts. CBN contributor Chuck Holton is on the ground in El Paso.
And the Border Patrol is saying they're drowning. They're having to pull people off of law enforcement duties, things that are very important to the national security of this country, in order to process all these people here. And because they don't have the facilities to take care of them, they're having to just let them leave.
They're being released with a notice to appear in immigration court, a process that could take years.
And within that flow are thousands of criminals, smugglers, gang members, and public safety threats that we're sworn to protect this country from.
This warning comes a day after the Pentagon shifted $1 million of its budget to build a border fence, construction that some say is desperately needed.
They're not seeing people climb the fence because it just ends right here. There, that's Mexico back behind me there, and you can see down below there's no fence, there's nothing. So the migrants don't have to climb the no-climb fence, they just walk around it.
Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan defended moving the money for the fence on Capitol Hill.
Given a legal order from the Commander-in-Chief, we are executing on that order.
To look at the Pentagon as sort of a piggy bank / slush fund where you can simply go in and grab money for something when you need it really undermines the credibility of the entire DoD budget.
Those on the ground say mending the broken border will take a multi-level fix, and it needs to happen soon.
Legislative relief, changes in the law, and closing the vulnerabilities in our legal framework is the only way that this flow is going to be reduced, and we're going to be able to restore integrity to our immigration system.
And officials say time is of essence because with warmer weather coming, that will only increase the flow of migrants and continue making a bad situation even worse. John and Jenna.
National security correspondent Eric Phillips, thanks for that report.
All right, thank you, Eric. We'll hear now from more our Matthew Cottonetti, editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon, and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. Matt, to you first. Let's talk about Russia collusion. We've seen the Mueller Report. It came out, or we've seen, whatever Bill Barr released. But some Democrats, like Adam Schiff, they're still pushing the idea of collusion, doubling down. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess they have nowhere else to go but down. This is the Democratic line, and I think it was kind of wishful thinking on the part of a lot of Republicans and conservatives to think now that we have the Mueller Report, now that Bill Barr's letter has come out, and we see that the president did not collude with Russia, we see that there will be no obstruction of justice charges. It was foolish to think that Democrats would just abandon it, because you have to understand, the conspiracy theory of Russian collusion is really the only thing that's keeping the Democratic Party together at this point. It fuels subscriptions for the New York Times, it fuels ratings for the left-wing cable channels, and it keeps the Democrats all on one page. So they're never going to give this up.
Well, speaking of collusion, this is an issue that divides the Democratic Party. You already have people like Rashida Tlaib and Texas Congressman Al Green who are pushing for the process of impeachment. Is this going to be, David, something that divides the party all the way up into the 2020 elections?
Yeah, I think so, until they have a candidate. And then that candidate's going to have to figure out to pull everybody together. That's typically how it works, but typically in Trump and Democrats, we can throw all that out the mix. That word doesn't exist in our politics today. The Democrats have all sorts of problems. And real quick point, going back to the collusion situation with Adam Schiff. Look, they keep saying they want the underlying evidence. Well, why do they want the underlying evidence? So they can create their own special counsel report. They'll come to their own conclusion once they see the underlying evidence. That's what this is about.
Could their investigation, though, be as thorough as Robert Mueller's?
Well, even if it was as thorough, the short answer is probably not. But even if it was as thorough, it's going to look partisan. Doesn't matter. I mean, Robert Mueller had 500 witnesses, 2,800 subpoenas, $25 million, and he came up with no collusion. Real quick, I do want to say, Adam Schiff, if you notice what he said today, Abby mentioned some of this, but he's saying, I said collusion. I never said there wasn't any there was conspiracy. He's trying to conflate, he's trying to kind of split hairs here. Collusion versus conspiracy. That's his way of getting out of it. Yeah.
To the issue of the border, we're seeing a lot of images from down there today. The president today tweeting that he may close the Mexico border. Matt, this, of course, is one of his bread and butter issues, immigration. Do you think, how heavily do you think he'll play on this in 2020? Is this a winner for President Trump?
I think it definitely keeps his base together. I think more importantly than the politics, though, it is a crisis. I mean, you listen to the authorities down there, they don't know what to do. And the problem isn't so much in the fact that we don't have a wall, which is now being built because of the emergency declaration, or is about to be built. The problem is in our amnesty laws. And you have to change the laws in order to address this problem, which is unaccompanied minors and family units crossing the border illegally, and then once they are apprehended, saying that they wish to seek asylum in the United States, even though they might not actually be asylees, they might be just economic migrants looking for a better life. Until Congress changes these laws and fixes these loopholes which allow this procedure to happen, I'm afraid there really won't be any solution to our border crisis.
Maybe for both of you, is this perhaps a potential breaking point? Because you heard the Director of Customs and Border and Security talk about these historic numbers this week, potentially reaching up to 100,000 people crossing the border illegally this month. What's going to be the groundswell for there to be an addressing of what the Trump administration isn't just calling a border crisis, but a humanitarian crisis?
Well, the breaking point is that we no longer have beds and facilities to hold the people who are crossing illegally. And so now what you've had is that CBP has had to release them into the population. And this is something that the Trump administration has worked very hard to prevent, but can't seem to do it without Congress.
And release them without ankle bracelets. And I think that is something Donald Trump is not going to have any part of. That's part of the reason why you saw maybe I've got to close the southern border, because you can already see that Donald Trump, who's supposed to be tough on immigration and can't stand catch and release, is now all of a sudden letting all these folks go, and CPB has to actually have no ankle bracelets on these folks. That's the crisis point that we're at.
Yeah. All right, David Brody and Matthew Continetti, thank you both.
Thanks.
Well, if the election was held today, Americans are split on if President Trump would have the upper hand. A new NBC News SurveyMonkey poll finds 43% say the president would be reelected. At the same time, 43% say it would be his yet-to-be-determined Democratic opponent. 45% say they approve of the job President Trump is doing. And where that number climbs is among Republicans. 538 shows the president has an 87% approval rating among the GOP.
Well, those numbers welcome news to the president as he prepares to take his show on the road. Some call it a victory lap as Mr. Trump heads to rally some of his faithful base in Michigan.
Now, the rally comes as many lawmakers are pushing to see Robert Mueller's full investigation. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn. Ben?
Well, Jenna and John, we're hearing that Mueller report is more than 300 pages long, and we'll likely hear more about it tonight during the rally in Grand Rapids. Media outlets are taking notice, such as Time magazine, which released this cover of President Trump just singing in the rain about news that Mueller found no collusion in his report. Tensions on the rise in D.C. as pressure mounts on Attorney General William Barr to release the full Mueller report. Before that happens, however, Barr must remove grand jury and classified info.
He also wants to check with prosecutors who have cases associated, with this issue, that it won't undercut them.
Or possibly compromise international security and intelligence.
It was proven very strongly, no collusion, no obstruction, no nothing.
That's certainly the AG's summary of the 22-month investigation. Despite that, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, said the report should be released.
Paid for with public money. It's done under public auspices. It's a matter of unique interest to Americans.
At this rate, it'll take Barr weeks, not months, to go through it, and the report should be released sometime in April. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Coming up, religious freedom in America. Why some worry it's in jeopardy.
Well, is religious freedom in America in danger? After 4 years of research, the Barna Group has just released the largest study ever on religious freedom in America. 3/4 of the U.S. clergy now believe religious freedom is becoming less valued in our country. 43% say religious freedom is worse in America than it was 10 years ago. And 44% of faith leaders think it'll continue to get worse in the coming decade. Barna President David Kinnaman says a vast majority of pastors feel they often are constrained or limited in the way they preach or teach in today's society.
And joining us now is Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you.
Well, first of all, I just want to start with that Barna study. It shows that an overwhelming majority of pastors, 75%, are concerned about religious liberty. That number, though, is down from the high in 2015 and 2016, which was 82%. So still a cause for concern, but the number is not as high as it was. Why do you think that is?
Well, we're seeing positive developments here. We have an administration now that has fully embraced the promotion and the protection of religious freedom. We've got the executive order in place. We've got an administration that is promoting religious freedom abroad. So there's positive things that are happening. The problem is the damage that was done in the previous administration, and a lot of this is beginning to play out in local communities across the country, whether it's the bathroom policies where, people are being, children are being forced to shower or use the restrooms with people of the opposite sex because of this whole policy of pushing gender confusion, and that overlays with religious freedom. I mean, because people have moral objections to that. You see bakers, florists, you see these things still playing out in the courts. So still a lot of concern. I mean, especially pastors see the implications of this on their congregants, but they're also very concerned about what this means to the future of the church. Are we going to be quarantined within the four walls of our church and not allowed to take biblical teaching outside? I mean, that's really what a church does. A church is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. That's proclaiming the gospel, the truth of Scripture. That's at stake if we continue in this cultural confusion that was really launched in earnest by the previous administration.
I want to ask you, turning the topic now to abortion. Next week, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise plans to force a vote on something called the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act to protect babies born after a botched abortion. Probably a no-go in the Democratic-controlled House. Democrats blocked a similar measure in the Senate just earlier this month. So why do pro-life lawmakers have such an uphill climb with this?
I'm actually somewhat optimistic that we're going to get this. Yeah, I talked to Congressman Scalise, a friend of mine. He and I were elected at the same time back in Louisiana, so we work closely together. Look, this is such an issue. I mean, only 13% of the American public subscribes to this idea that we should allow infanticide. Now, it's disturbing that 13% of the population, but when you look at where the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others are at, they are so far outside the mainstream of the American public. And so what I think is going to happen as this discharge petition comes out, and you have to have 218 signatures, you've got 197 Republicans, I think they'll all be on board. You've got to pick up 21 Democrats. I think that's very possible because many of these Democrats, remember, defeated Republicans, some of them moderate Republicans, but still in kind of conservative-leaning districts.
Sure.
This is so far to the left. I think they'll have to be supported.
How much of an issue do you think this is going to be in the 2020 election cycle?
It's going to be huge, John. I think it's going to be a huge issue. We're promoting this issue from a standpoint of, I think this is a deciding moment for the nation. And the president put it forth in his State of the Union address, essentially giving America a choice between life and death. I mean, he put it out there boldly and clearly. We are launching an initiative called End Birthday Abortion, where we're going to take this message to Nancy Pelosi with a hat. You may be familiar with these thermal hats that newborn babies get. We're going to take 90,000 of these to Nancy Pelosi so that she can't deny the fact that this is real and that we're talking about taking the lives of babies who are born alive, refusing them medical aid. I actually think that in the 116th Congress we can pass this.
I'd be remiss not to put their point on the table, which is, but this is about a woman's right to choose. This is about reproductive health. How do you argue against that?
When this baby is born, surviving the first attempt on their life, You have to go back to the times of the Romans, when they allowed babies to die because they didn't want them. What defined Western civilization is that we understood the value of each and every human life. This is not an issue of an abortion. This is an issue of whether or not we're going to be a culture that will take the life of a born child. This is a defining moment for America. And I have faith in the American people. Now, it's going to take a little bit of work to get the political class to go along, but I think it has to happen, and I think it will happen.
Zooming out a little bit, this week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced expanded measures for the Mexico City policy. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of that?
I met with the Secretary before he made that announcement. Again, this is consistent with an administration that is advancing religious freedom and human life. This is where I think the conservative voters, Christians in particular, need to understand that elections have consequences, and we're reaping the benefits of an election in which we elected an individual who has selected a team that is operating primarily according to the Republican Party platform that laid out all of these things, that they would be a party that would advance human life. I think, I haven't said this before publicly, John, but I think I can say it to your audience. I think they'd understand it. I think what we see happening in America right now, it's not with the words, but with the actions. I think America is repenting from its embracing of abortion 46 years ago with Roe v. Wade. Now, we're accustomed to hearing the words repentance, but repentance in the New Testament, the Greek metanoia, it means to change, to turn, go the reverse course. That's what this administration is doing on abortion. I think we need to continue to pray that we'll go full course in turning the course and embracing life once again.
Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council, we always appreciate you being with us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
As cleanup begins, the new threat facing cyclone victims in Mozambique. When we come back. Cases of cholera confirmed tonight in Mozambique after that deadly cyclone tore through the East African nation. At least 5 cases have been confirmed in the hard-hit port city of Beira. The city is home to about 500,000 people, many of which are still struggling to find clean drinking or sanitation water. The World Health Organization is warning of a second possible disaster if waterborne diseases like cholera spread in the devastated region. The WHO says about 900,000 cholera vaccines should arrive later this week.
Well, for more on the situation in Mozambique, I spoke with Heidi Baker earlier. She ministers on the ground there with her organization, Iris Global, and I asked her what she's seen firsthand.
So much bizarre devastation. The village where we just went, all hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses were totally destroyed. The roofs were gone. People are sleeping in the mud. But there is intense resilience in the Mozambican people.
Just one last question for you. Can you talk about what Iris Relief is doing to help people out and how long you plan to be on the ground there? You got your hands full.
I got my hands full. Iris Global and Iris Relief are working together, so the relief wings helping with the immediate disaster. As far as Iris, we've been in Mozambique for nearly 25 years, so we're going to be on the ground till Jesus comes back. And the key really here is that we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of believers who are willing to work with us, with Iris Relief. And all the churches are joining together, and they're able to use this NGO that we have there to get things distributed with national leaders. So that's what's really exciting to me is the national people, the people of Mozambique. If we can just help them, they don't just want hands out. They really want the hands up, and they are lovers of Jesus. They believe in the Lord. Anybody who didn't know him, like just today, anybody who didn't know the Lord received the Lord. But they literally are ready and they want to work with us. So our desire is to partner, with the body of Christ.
Really so appreciate the work of Heidi Baker and her team. I think the death toll is somewhere around 500, just hovering around there and affecting more than 2 million people. So certainly those folks are in our prayers.
Yeah, and she's an amazing lady.
Yeah.
Great story.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great night.